bona fide beats. Heavy hit spits, wild file style, freak flows fast, close chord dial, make links slate at the 8 pass, make more papes, too tired crash, self-serve cake all night, nag, hurry home now, girl.
Welcome everybody back to the Deepwater Podcast, and today is a very, very special day. Today, we begin the process of moving forward to advance this podcast. And it should also begin to feel a little bit like Christmas to you if you're a Dolphins fan. If it doesn't feel like Christmas to you right now, you should check your pulse. You probably need to go see somebody because today is like Christmas Eve. It really is. And we're going to get to open all of these presents because we've been good all year long. And Santa Greer and Santa Flores are going to bring us gifts for behaving ourselves this year. But before we do that, I got to let you guys in on a little secret. For those of you who've been with us from the beginning, what you do not realize is that you have been a part of a project for these first 13 episodes of the Deepwater Podcast. And what project is that? Well, you're going to find out right here, right now, today, why we have gone through this roster, position group by position group, and placed players into those buckets because it's going to translate into this podcast moving forward next year. So before I get into that, though, I would like to announce another segment that we're adding to this show called Ask a Fan. That's PHAN. This is going to be a segment where we give you guys an opportunity to be a part of the show just because you're asking good questions and we feel like maybe you need to get in on the debate about this football team. So today we are going to have our first guest on the show at the end of the show. But let's start with what I promised you. Let's begin with why we placed these players in these buckets. What we have been doing over the course of the last few months is we have been building a board based on what we have on our team and what our team needs. And because we've gone through this process at this point, what you have is a complete roster evaluation. And this would be the first thing you have to do before you go into the draft process and examine draft picks, because you need to know what you have and you need to know what your needs are. So where did we come out? Because in reality, this was a project we started to do this way in the beginning with that in mind, because we wanted to show you guys how to break down a roster that you currently have before you go into the draft process. And what we're going to do is we're going to play this season out, and next season we're going to build a complete draft board in addition to doing a roster evaluation. Okay? So what did we come out with when we place these players in these buckets? Well, before we get into that, let's explain what these buckets are for the people who have not seen the previous 13 episodes. The first category is studs. These are players who consistently play at a level that would leave them in consideration for Pro Bowls. And if they do that continuously, that will place them close to getting a gold jacket. So on any given team, no matter how great that team is, there will only be a few studs. So that's the studs category. Second is starters. And this is the category that we place players that you're comfortable with going into Sundays with this person in the lineup. Do you expect this person to win the game for you? No, not really. Maybe they could muster up that performance, but you don't expect them to win a game for you, and you don't expect them to lose a game for you. You're comfortable. And winning in this league, even winning Super Bowls, is determined on how many starters you can put on the field every Sunday. Okay? The third bucket that we have are incumbents. Incumbents are usually players like draft picks who are in their third season, or veterans that you might have claimed or brought in, and for whatever reason, be it injury or performance, they just haven't taken the step that you fully expected them to take yet. And you're probably going to bring in competition for these players in the offseason. The final category are duds. And if we don't mention your name, you're in that dud box. Okay? So where did we come out at the end of this offseason evaluation when we went through this entire roster position group by position group. So here's how it shakes out, beginning with the offense. As you can see, going position group by position group, the only stud we have on the roster is Devontae Parker. And the starters are listed in their proper category, and the incumbents are listed in their proper category. The only other items that need an explanation are the asterisks. And you can see in the legend that the asterisk donates a wild card nomination reserved for players that have a higher than starter potential due to a unique talent. And Preston Williams, Kalen Ballage, Jakeem Grant, and Josh Rosen fit into that category. Now, that wild card does not mean that they've shown that on a consistent basis. It just means that there's something unique about them. For example, Preston Williams' size, weight, and speed, Jakeem Grant's ridiculous speed, and Josh Rosen's arm talent, Kalen Ballage's size, weight, and speed, mean that if they ever put it together, that these guys have the potential to become not just starters, but they could become studs in your system. All right? So, moving over to the defensive side of the football, if you notice, we don't have any studs. And I know a lot of you guys are going to say, how can you classify Devontae Parker as a stud, but Xavier Howard and Byron Jones are not studs? Because this is a what have you done for me lately league. The issue with Devontae Parker has always been his health. When Devontae Parker is healthy, he's always shown that ability. And because he was healthy for 16 games, I have to classify him into the stud category because he may have finally beaten that injury bug that's plagued him his entire career. What he would have been last season is he would have been a wild card starter. Okay? Xavier Howard and Byron Jones can claim that status depending on what they do this year. Xavier Howard's issue is his health. Byron Jones' issue is can he perform in Miami the way that he did in Dallas? And technically, you could say the same is true for Kyle Van Noy. I should have included him as a wild card, but he is considered a starter in this system. So what does all this mean? Why did we do all of this roster evaluation and place these players into these buckets? Well, we wanted to see what we ended up with at the end of the season so we can generate this, a needs chart. And based on our values, we feel like you need to have 15 starters. And that's 15 starters on both sides of the ball. And that consists of your 11 in your starting lineup plus 4 quality backups who could serve as starters at key positions. The total is actually 32 because you're going to add in a field goal kicker and a punter. But just for the needs of the offense and the defense, you need 30 starters to be competitive in the NFL enough to win or chase championships every season. So where did Miami fall out? Based on the buckets that we put players in, Miami has 9 starters on offense and 12 on defense. So as you can see that those needs shake out to be 6 starters on offense are needed and 3 starters on defense are needed. And you can see our breakdown of where we think Miami needs the most help right here in this chart based on our evaluations. So Miami needs a total of 9 starters. Okay, they need to come out of this draft with 9 starters or someone needs to develop to make 9 more starters. And the Dolphins have 14 picks in the 2020 NFL draft. Now, I understand that there's not a direct correlation on this chart, and that's because under needs, you see, for example, on offense where it says 2 tight ends, 3 offensive linemen, a quarterback, and a running back. Those are overall needs that we feel like Miami needs to address combined in the draft and in free agency. So it's not a number for number match, but those are things that we'd like to see Miami come out with these 14 draft picks. So can Miami get 9 more starters between the draft and free agency? Is it doable? Yes, but players have to make themselves into starters. So on paper, it may seem as though Miami has what they need, but you can't identify that until the pads come on. And that's just a fact. There's no way around it. Okay? So Now you guys know how to evaluate a team and look at what a team needs and then build a draft board beginning from there to fit whatever your favorite prospects are. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take a break from me just talking and leading the show. And we're going to introduce this new segment called Ask a Fan. And in Ask a Fan, I have a gentleman who reached out to me who has his handle. His name is Frosty. And Frosty wanted to convey his thoughts on how he feels about the Dolphins this offseason and what their needs are. And the way that this works is we ask a question in advance. We give you guys a chance to prepare what you want to say, and then we record it and we bring it back and bring it onto the podcast. So this is my conversation that I had with Frosty about the Dolphins and this upcoming draft and offseason. All right, folks, welcome to the Ask a Fan section of the Deepwater Podcast. And on the phone, I got a gentleman who goes by the name of Frosty. And Frosty would like to step in and give his thoughts on where the team is headed this particular offseason. And I'd like to introduce you guys to him right now. Frosty, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Excellent, man. This is what we're trying to do. We want to have more fans on this show. And I understand you're coming from that Georgia area, man. You know, it seems like the Dolphins have a lot of fans in Georgia. Are you seeing that?
I'm seeing that. We range all the way to New York.
Absolutely. Now, you and I have had extensive offline conversations about this upcoming draft and the quarterback situation in particular. And I understand that you're a very big fan of Justin Herbert. And what I would like to do is I'm going to ask you to sell this fan base on Justin Herbert right now.
Okay, I can certainly do that. First, I want to go over the comparables with Justin Herbert and Tua. Justin Herbert is 6'6", 237 out of Oregon. Tua is 6 1/4, 207 out of Alabama. In the 0 to 19 yard range, Tua on target percentage was 79.3. Herbert's was 79.2. Tua career stats, 33 games, 69.3 completion percentage with 7,442 yards, 87 touchdowns, 9 rushing TDs. Justin Herbert's 44 games, 4 years, 64%, 10,541 yards, 95 touchdowns, 13 rushing TDs. Tua final year, 71%, 33 touchdowns. Justin Herbert's final year, 69%, 32 touchdowns with Oregon. So after doing extensive research, it showed that Justin Herbert, my overall draft analysis of Justin Herbert is Herbert has exceptional size, mobility, and arm strength. He has a big arm, which is ideal for pushing the ball down the field. Herbert has also the ability to throw underneath to challenge linebackers. Herbert's accuracy is exceptional when he throws on the run, such as bootlegs or unscheduled throws. Herbert is a particularly good runner for his size. Herbert at times worked to buy time in the pocket, as he sometimes holds the ball too long. Justin Herbert is a physical specimen and has all the tools to be a great QB number 1. Overall, Justin can make all the NFL throws with the right coaching to tweak his game and improve his accuracy. Herbert has the potential to be a Pro Bowl QB1. Versus Tua. Tua lacked ideal height for the position. While at Alabama, he primarily operates in the gun offense. He throws exceptional underneath passes such as the slant and crossers. He does not possess an elite arm, but is an above-average passer. He has good pocket awareness, in which he buys time behind a good offensive line so he can make those underneath passes. We're talking about 5 to 10 yards. Tua suffered a serious hip injury similar to Bo Jackson, an all-time great. Tua numbers supports his poor red zone performances. Overall, Tua is a good QB prospect. However, his injury that precedes him makes him a QB1 liability. So there, Miami fans, that's the reason I would take Herbert over Tua in the 2020 draft any day.
All right, man. That's actually that seems well thought out, and it sounds like you put a lot of time into that evaluation of Justin Herbert. And I know you and I have had these conversations about whether or not we feel like the Dolphins should trade any assets to draft any one of these quarterbacks. Do you still feel as though I feel that Miami should not trade away draft assets to get any of these quarterbacks, or has your opinion of Justin Herbert changed now that you've watched the film?
My opinion has not changed. We should not, under any consideration and under any circumstances, change or trade away our draft capital for any quarterback in this draft.
Excellent. We can definitely agree on that. Interesting. And I know you and I have also had discussions about Miami having 3 picks in the first round this year. We have pick 5, pick 18, and pick 26. And based on those discussions and based on who you believe is going to be there, who would you select in this particular draft at those positions?
Okay, all right. At number 5, I will have to go with Derek Brown. Derek Brown has excellent size, power, and athleticism for a defensive tackle. And moving on to pick, what was it, 18?
Yes, sir. Pick number 18.
Pick number 18, I went with, on my draft board, Jordan Love. Love has ideal size, arm strength, and excellent athletic abilities. And then pick number 28, I picked AJ Espinoza, a skilled pass rusher with outstanding size, strength, and effort. So just to recap on my draft pick, number 5, Derrick Brown. Number 18, Jordan Love. 28, Espinoza.
That's not bad, man. A lot of people are, everybody's so obsessed with the quarterback position at this point. And, they're going to be shocked by the fact that you chose a defensive tackle at number 5. And you and I have had this discussion about not going with a quarterback at that pick, just because I feel like you need somebody at number 5 who's ready to play. They're ready to start now. They don't need to develop. And Derrick Brown fits that bill, especially considering today Miami released another defensive tackle. Gerald Willis III got released a couple of days ago, and you and I both like Jonathan Ledbetter. And they let Jonathan Ledbetter go today, which makes me think that maybe he's not recovered from that injury he had somehow. And just for clarity, the Dolphins have the 26th overall pick and not the 28th overall pick. And I'm sorry if I said 28 the last time. So just to get that corrected. But I like your picks there for those 3 picks in the first round for Miami. I like the fact that you stood pat and you don't believe in trading away assets just to get a quarterback. Final question on Ask a Fan. Which player that is already on the roster do you expect to take the biggest leap forward this season?
The player that I expect to take the biggest leap forward is Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki had an outstanding year last year, and I think he will flourish even more on our new offensive coordinator, Chan Gailey. If you follow Chan Gailey doing all his tenures at the Bills, the Jets, you will notice he will include, even Dallas, he does include his tight ends. And so with Mike Gesicki having that excellent year he had, and including the offseason, and he's hungry. He's a Penn State guy. He's smart, intelligent, athletic. He's going to flourish this year.
Mike Gesicki. Yeah, Mike Gesicki tends to be a popular pick, man. You know, my only beef with Mike Gesicki has always been the same thing. I'm waiting on Mike Gesicki to improve his blocking, and hopefully that'll come this off season. And it's interesting that you brought up Chan Gailey because that's exactly one of the things we covered on the assistants episode a couple of months back. And I'm going to post a link to that episode right here for those who have not seen it. So, Frosty, man, I'd like to thank you for taking your time to be out on the show and to give fans your perspective. And shout out to you for, just being here and being a man of your word and being here on the show.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad you invited me. And more times you invite me, more times I'll be back as a special guest.
All right, man. Thanks. Take care.
Yep.
All right. It's good to hear somebody else's perspective on what Miami should be doing this offseason. And that's something that we're going to continue to do moving forward. But what I'd like to do now is I'd like to address some of the comments that we've gotten recently on some of our episodes as it pertains to this particular draft. This one comes to us from Dwayne Wood, and he asks, does the Byron Jones signing light a fire under Xavier Howard's feet to come out strong in 2020? Does the Byron Jones signing ease the workload on the Fins at safeties? Will the Fins draft Xavier McKinney, Jeremy Childs, Grant Delpit, Terrell Burgess, Julian Blackman, or Kyle Duggar to strengthen the secondary even more? I would say absolutely they need to draft one of those safeties. And I'm going to throw another name in there that's completely undervalued, and that's Antoine Winfield Jr., the son of former defensive back Antoine Winfield. This guy doesn't have the eye-popping measurables of some of the safeties in this draft, but he's a smart, instinctive player, and he just makes plays. And you can see that we identified safety as a need for the Dolphins, and we feel like the Dolphins need to come out of this draft with at least two safeties. If they don't draft one safety, sign another in free agency, something needs to change at that position, because going into the season with Bobby McCain as a safety is just a recipe for disaster, in our opinion. Now, based on this team needs that we have identified right here, where these players are going to be picked is actually the topic of discussion every year in the NFL. So, as you can see by the way we went through this process, identifying players and putting them in buckets, you can see how your needs are identified. And now you have to place priority on which need. For a lot of you guys out there, quarterback is the number one priority out of this list of needs for the Dolphins. For folks such as myself, I don't see that as more of a pressing need this particular season, due to the fact that with the draft capital that the Dolphins have, this opportunity to pick 5 times in the first 2 rounds is extremely rare, to add that much talent to your team in one offseason. And this particular draft is very deep. How do you know? Look at the number of players that have been traded for draft picks this season. Even as of right now, Jacksonville is trying to shake Leonard Fournette loose. Leonard Fournette was the 4th overall pick, and if you think that he didn't play well last season, you'd be sadly mistaken. He got 1,600 yards from scrimmage on a bad offense, and nobody was game planning for Gardner Minshew last season. No disrespect to Gardner Minshew, but the reality is the opportunity to get extra draft picks in this draft is very important, and the Dolphins have a lot of them. So why would I avoid picking a quarterback at number 5 in this draft? I'm going to give you a few reasons why, and I'm going to start with what's going on in Houston. The Dolphins have the Texans' first-round pick next season, and Bill O'Brien is setting up a recipe for disaster for the decisions he's making. So the probability that that's a high draft pick continues to increase. And when I look at the draft next season, there's a lot of options at quarterback next season. Trevor Lawrence is coming out next season. And if Trevor Lawrence were to come out this season, he'd probably be the number 1 quarterback taken. Justin Fields is probably coming out next season. Okay? Kellen Mond is coming out next season. And there's another player who transferred from Wake Forest to Georgia that you need to keep an eye on, and his name is Jamie Newman. So if quarterback continues to be a need next season, There's an opportunity to bundle those picks together and move up to select the guy that you really like. I just think it's too often that teams make the mistake of reaching for a quarterback before the team is ready. Why not take this unique opportunity with all of that money in free agency and all of these early draft picks in this draft and a total of 14 picks in this draft to build the team before you reach for that quarterback, which is the final piece of the puzzle? So, what would I do at pick number 5? I'm going with the ultimate hybrid defender because he can create so much confusion, and that's Isaiah Simmons. The things he can do at the size he can do it at just can't be replicated. Is this man coverage? It looks like it. Is he blitzing? Or is he going to drop into an underneath zone? No. What he's going to do is he's going to drop back and cover the deep third of the field. And what I want you to notice is the receivers don't get beyond him. Okay? This is a very big man that can cover all over the field. And on the next play, he's a free safety. And on the next play, he might be strong side linebacker. He can literally play 5 different positions. And you can insert him on all these places on the defense to help all of those gaps that we identified when we put this board together. Okay? And what about Frost's pick of Derek Brown? You guys already know how I feel about Derek Brown from the Setting the Edge episode. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll this tape. And this is against LSU. And after about a minute of this tape, it's not cut ups of his highlights. It's just simply play after play after play. And I'm not going to say anything because if you don't know what you're looking at after a minute of watching that tape, there's nothing else for me to say. Just watch. What are your eyes telling you? And I'll tell you what I see. What I see is a young version of Ndamukong Suh. And the comparison to Ndamukong Suh absolutely fits with this guy. I could see the Dolphins taking this guy early, and I understand completely why they sent a large contingent to this guy's pro day. Because someone with that type of relentless pressure to just throw away blockers play after play after play, these guys do not grow on trees. And you should remember, once again, Vince Wilfork in New England. I'm sure Brian Flores does. Could the Dolphins go in another direction at 5? Absolutely. There are several offensive tackles in this draft that are worthy of top 10 consideration. And what's interesting is there are a couple of players that had drug tests flagged at the combine. And under normal circumstances, this would cause that player to drop in the draft. But because of the new CBA, a drug test being flagged or a drug test failure does not immediately trigger a suspension anymore. What triggers the suspension is if the player misses treatment or they miss any of the action plans put in place to get their lives back on track. So teams are a lot less skittish about taking these players who have these flags. So Mekhi Becton may still be in play. Okay. Javon Kinlaw may still be in play. And the Dolphins have 3 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks and 1 third-round pick. And in my opinion, 5 is the sweet spot in this draft. And I'm going to tell you why. Joe Burrow's gone at number 1. Okay. And I don't believe that the Redskins are going to allow anybody else to select Chase Young from them. So the pick that's actually in play is the Detroit Lions. And due to the demand on quarterbacks, I would not be surprised if someone traded up with Detroit at number 3 to take one of those quarterbacks, whether it's Tua or Justin Herbert. The other pick that may be in play would be number 4 with the Giants, but I don't believe that pick is in play. I think that is a smokescreen. They need help at tackle, and the opportunity to take the best tackle in the draft will be there for the Giants. So what does that mean if you get 2 quarterbacks taken out of the top 5 picks and the other selection is Chase Young? That means players like Derek Brown and Isaiah Simmons, who should not be there, they're only there because of the demand for the quarterback position, the overrated demand for the quarterback position. And the Dolphins can get one of those players right now. And either one of those guys is a complete difference maker. So what is my dream first round draft scenario? My dream first round draft scenario would be to take Isaiah Simmons at 5, trade up slightly to pick up Mekhi Becton, and hopefully one of those tight ends is sitting there in the back half of the round. Even if I have to trade up to get a Cole Kmet, so be it, because I don't feel that the tight end position is particularly deep in this draft. And if you want one, you might want to grab one early. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, we have Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki can't block, okay? And the other players we have at the position have been underwhelming blocking, okay? So that would be my dream scenario in this draft. What I feel is likely to happen at number 5, the more and more I look at what's going on, the more and more I believe that Brown is the play at 5, because the Dolphins keep shedding defensive tackles, and they don't have a lot of those big body guys on the roster currently. Now, they can always pick one up in free agency, but the rumor going around about the Dolphins trading up, but not with that first pick, with that second pick, leads me to believe that one of those defensive tackles or one of those offensive tackles may be in play with that second pick. All right. So that's going to do it for this portion of the draft episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and stay tuned. We may have another surprise coming for you before the draft actually happens on the Deepwater Podcast.
City overpowers the country. Asphalt rolling over animals and trees, and y'all still sleep. Red dirt used for clay brick. The country overpowers the city on some rain shit. Broke it all down in the slot where the hogs be. Chickens in the backyard, dog on the ground sleep. Pond in the front yard, that's where the fish at. The city sold the country for their shit in the contract. Now they got beef, but the stock is the same world. Flexing on each other when they the same girl. City made commerce to feed the illusion. Country did double up green with dead men. Fuel to the fire, they both got burnt quick. Screaming, God help me, and the devil made me do it. City and the country sold out for real cheap. Worry about each other when the beast gotta eat. The beast gotta eat. The beast gotta eat.